Hello. So today we're going to sketch out some characters in the style of PokeStudio.com. If you haven't been to Poke Studio, this is kind of what it looks like. Lots of very shapely sorts of characters. This is some really, really gorgeous artwork. Every single one of these illustrations that Poke Studio does is just a nice little master class, especially a nice little master class on things like shape language and just lots of neat little observations and little stories that are worked into all these illustrations. So we're going to also create characters that are similar to these, just very very simple characters. So today we're going to go over how to grab references and add them to your canvas, and then how to maybe go about sketching some characters very quickly that might be in this style. So the first thing is you're going to want to have your Photoshop open up and ready to go. You'll want a 5000 by 3000 300 dpi canvas would be my recommendation. Remember on your layers to do a layer above your background. This is kind of an old background that I'm using. You can just have a flat gray background. It's no big deal either way. Okay, so what do we want to do? The first thing that we want to do is we want to just focus on bringing in some references, right? References are extremely important anytime you're doing any sort of drawing, because if you don't have good references, you have to just sort of guess your way through art problems, and that's not a really great way to draw. It's not very efficient, and generally you don't end up with things that look right. Okay, so references are very, very important. So before you do any drawing, always think first. Get references, think about what it is that you want to make, and then do your drawing. Okay, so in this particular case, I've gone through and I've grabbed a whole bunch of screenshots from Poke Studio. You can see this is basically what I put together. There's about 15 different frames that I just used. I used my screen capture tool called Snagit, but you can just do a control print screen, or you can save some of these images to your desktop. Obviously, we're not going to use these one-to-one. This is proprietary information, so we want to make sure that we observe the copyright, but we want to just sort of maybe learn from this style a little bit. Okay, so how do I use these references? I mean, having the references is fine. I mean, one way that you can use the references is you can, just click on any of these and you can have them. If you have a dual screen system, you can put your references up on one side and then you can do your drawing on the other. I sometimes do that, but actually the way that I find works best for me in my own personal workflow is I'll grab all of my references and I'll just drag them right onto the canvas, right? And you'll see that they sort of populate here one at a time. Right, so we have all 15, and they populate on all of these layers. Now, one thing that you might notice as you're looking at these layers over here is that my background doesn't have this little weird square with sort of looks like a square and a little page. So what's the difference between my background layer and all these other ones? Well, anytime you see this little icon here, that is called an icon for a smart object, right? So a smart object, if I use my move tool and I grab these guys, right, you'll notice that I have some limitations. So I can do like Control T, and I can I can make these smaller. Control T, again, transform. As long as this is in smart object mode, it really won't change. It sort of references kind of the original pixel density of the piece. So when things are in smart object mode, which is usually how references are when you pull them onto your canvas, you'll basically have something that won't degrade. Like if you make it too small, and then you have to blow it back up again, it will not degrade the pixel density. But the problem is also that you can't do quite as many things with smart objects. You'll notice that there are some transformation tools that are not open to you. Yeah, and you'll also notice some of your filters might not work. Some of your image adjustments might not work, like desaturation, stuff like that. Right, so what Photoshop is doing is it's trying to preserve the integrity of the original image. If you don't really care about this, because these are all just references, the first thing that you need to do is you need to transform these into just rasterized images. So to do that, all you have to do is right click on the layer and click rasterize layer, and we'll just do that for each one of these. And you'll notice as soon as it is rasterized, that smart object icon will be turned off. Now, as we're doing this, it's worth noting that if you want to create objects in your scene and convert them to smart objects, you can also do that here. Like if I go back, I can reconvert this to a smart object, right? So that can be nice if you want to resize something that's in your scene but you're not sure how big it needs to be. I would convert it to a smart object first. Yeah, smart objects are pretty handy. We'll probably talk about them a little bit more later. Right. And there might be faster ways to do this, but for the sake of our project today, we'll just go through one at a time and change those. Okay, so let's select all of these layers. I'm just going to click at the top, hold Shift down and click down here, do Control T, and I'm going to resize all of them at the same time and just make them much smaller. And if I hit the Enter key, that will resize them. Remember, these aren't smart objects anymore, so I can't blow them back up. Now, if you wanted to keep your smart objects kind of in place, you can resize them that way too. That's just fine. But for today, we're just going to, I wanted to sort of introduce you to the smart object idea. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just using my move tool, and I'm just click dragging all of these guys out because I want to see what I've got here. It looks like I had some duplicates in here. Remember your space bar for your navigation. Hold your space bar down. You get the pan. You can pan around your scene. All right, so what am I going to do? I'm going to try and basically just kind of arrange these in a way so that I get a good look at all of them. Right, you don't have to be super neat with this. I mean, some artists take great pride in going through each one of these pieces and making sure that everything is, pixel perfect, flush up against, the last piece. And if you wanted to do that and make your scene here nice and neat, you can do that if that's what you want. But it's not really all that necessary. If you're putting an art style guide together or something like that, that might be kind of a nice thing to do with your references, make a little design out of them. But for today, that's not really that big of a deal. So we'll just make this stuff look halfway decent. How about that? Okay, and again, remember, if you want to transform stuff, make something bigger or smaller, that's Control T. All right, let's call this maybe neat enough. Yeah, sure. That's fine. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I've got a lot of different layers here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of these, and I'm just going to do, again, click at the top, shift, and click at the bottom. And then I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to put all of those in a group, right? So I can turn the group on and off if I want. We'll call this refs for references. And we'll make it blue so that we know that it's maybe not really a part of the scene that we need to care about. The nice thing is if I turn off my auto select here, whenever you move something, you're going to see this auto select. You can turn it on or off. If it is off, then any layer that you have selected, you'll only affect that particular layer. If you turn auto select on, then any layer that you happen to click on will become the active layer, and you'll be able to move just that around, right? So if I have auto select on, it's going to be very hard for me to grab all of my references at the same time. But if I turn it off and I click on refs, I can move everything around. All right. I'm going to just actually shrink this down just a little bit more, and we'll put this off to the side, right? So for this particular part of the assignment, make sure that you just put these references on your canvas, just like this, and put them off to the side. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at these, right? So the first thing that we're going to do before we sketch an idea out is we're going to think about things a little bit. So the first thing that I'm going to do is kind of look at everything, right? I've got these eyes and this mouth over here, right? So I might go, okay, so I'm going to need an eye kind of like this. We've got these sort of noodly, mouths over here, something like that. I see a lot of these sorts of, water beads, these sweat beads, that kind of a thing. Some of the eyes are just circles. Some of the mouths are kind of just pill-shaped. We've got sort of these old 1930s eyes, right? So I'm just kind of jotting down some visual notes on things here. Again, we've got those water droplets. We've got those here. We've got those here. Right. So anytime you're looking at styles, you're going to be looking at a number of different elements. You're going to be looking at line weight. You're going to be looking at materials. You're going to be looking at lighting. You're going to be looking at color. You're going to be looking at shapes. All these sorts of things. Right. Here's another little mouth with a little kind of a tooth in it there. Right. We see a little bit of that depth. We've got some similar faces going on here and here. Okay, so we've got this. And one of the things too that we're looking at is how are things like the faces arranged, right? So we might say, okay, so we've got something like this, and then we've got a nice big exaggerated mouth. And we've got these like popsicle stick type teeth in here too, so we might draw those in, something like that. When we're looking at the faces, we've got sort of a very, very cute face. It's not just that you have two eyes and a smiley face. It's like the smile is kind of up between the eyes, right? Again, more like popsicle stick teeth here. A lot of that sort of popsicle stick shape now that I'm looking at it, right? Materials are fairly realistic. Right, fairly real over here. This is fairly real, very Yoshi's Island. Okay. More kind of like fluffy, furry materials here. So I'm just going to call out mats, right? So this is one of the things that you kind of want to do is kind of look through the references and see what works for you. We'll just call this layer notes. Right. So another thing that I might want to do while I'm looking through this, so our assignment is to sketch out 6 different characters. I'm going to do 3 maybe for this, but you're going to sketch out 3 of your own, and then you're going to sketch out 3 more just to see what you think might work the best. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually we're just going to kind of maybe jot down some ideas. So I see some characters in here that are like robots. I see characters in here that are food, specifically like popsicles, possibly like suckers. I see fruit. And planets. I see monsters. Like fish. Ocean life. So, right, so we're trying to just kind of get down what all of the themes are. All right, so cool. So I'm going to switch to a brush for sketching. And in your tool presets for class, I think that one, the best one that I like using is, for something like this, it would be probably 1 pencil B. I think that is usually the one that I use. Yeah, it just kind of looks like a pencil. All right, so let's do a few of these. Okay, so let's do something like a robot. When you sketch, one of the things that I like to do, I mean, a lot of these are very geometric shapes, and to get those shapes to look really nice, I mean, one of the things that I recommend that you do as an artist is keep your wrist straight. Use your arm, like draw with your elbow, not with your wrist. If you draw with your wrist, you're going to get this. If you draw with your elbow and keep your wrist straight, you can get very nice straight lines. You can even get like nice circles. Remember Control Z to back up, right? So you can get some pretty decent circles if you just keep your arm still, right? Get some nice lines if you keep your arm still, your wrist still, right? So let's just go ahead and get rid of these. I'm just going to use my polygonal lasso tool that we used last week, and we'll just click out of that. All right. Okay, so we have things like food, robots. Okay, so let's try food. Let's do a little strawberry guy, right? That'll be one of my sketches. So we'll do, and let's do a robot, and let's do what? I don't know, a fish. Let's just do a fish. Okay, so I've got a strawberry guy. Let's take a look at these. We see a lot of these characters, their heads are bigger than their bodies. So let's do that. Let's sort of over-exaggerate our shape for our strawberry. And remember, we can be a little off with that shape. This is a sketch. We don't have to worry about it too much. A lot of these bodies are very like noodly and small. So let's just give him some really simple legs and feet. And let's do that sort of cutesy, smile. We'll play around with the leafy top here, right? Right, and then we have seeds in our strawberry, and remember we've got that sort of drippy teardrop shape. So let's use that. Let's use that. And obviously strawberries are covered in these seeds. but let's not overdo it. There's really no need to go crazy here. And we don't want to have so many seeds that we can't tell what, you know, what's supposed to be more important, you know, our face or whatever. And you know, let's give him sort of some dopey, draggy arms here. We're not going to worry about the hands too much. I don't like that. Control Z. Yeah, maybe he just doesn't have arms. So he's just a body and a head. And some leaves. Some leaves. All right. Cool. So if I'm going to sketch some stuff in here, maybe I give him some shoes and socks. And if I go in underneath my sketch, I can grab an off-white. Remember off-white for your highlights and shadows, or well, for your highlights, not for your shadows. You don't really want to use white for a shadow. Remember, every surface that the light touches is going to be affected by that light in some way. But we don't want to use pure white and pure black. So what are we doing here? We're just kind of roughing in where the light's going to be. That's one way that we could do it if we want to use the pencil. But I'm feeling like if I use my lasso tool here, I can roughly get the shape. If you want to, by the way, release some part of your lasso, if you hold down the Alt key, you'll see that your lasso has a minus, and you can just kind of undraw certain parts. All right, so maybe for this part, maybe instead of using that pencil, I'll use Airbrush Soft. Yeah, and then I can just kind of push that hue a little bit, or that value rather, and then we'll take sort of a lighter color here. Maybe we'll lighten up the area around the face a little bit, and maybe we'll take some of that black. Remember, Alt click if you want to grab any color that you see, right? Maybe you want to add some little divots around where those berry seeds are. All right, and that'll sort of be our strawberry guy. And that's just a sketch, and that should do it. Okay, so let's move on to our next one. Our next one is a robot. We'll go over to our notes layer again, all right? And let's do a pill-shaped head for this guy. All right, and we'll give him, let's take a look here. Got this little TV guy over here. So he's kind of a robot. I kind of like his little legs here, and I like his sort of pixelated face. We also have this robot over here, which is a lot more like future-y looking. We've got something like this. Yeah, so there's a lot of ideas to sort of choose from here. So I'm going to sort of emphasize the square shape of the head. And how about we do this? How about we just do a visor. I'm not feeling that. Let's get rid of this. Let's give him big old robo eyes. Yeah, that'll work. And then here we'll maybe do this sort of coiled legs like we saw. And maybe we'll do some simple arms, and basically all we're doing is we're taking that teardrop shape and we're pulling it out. Maybe we'll do some little robo claws here too. Right, this doesn't have to be perfect. If I don't like how the head is centered, I can just grab it with my lasso tool and just kind of yank it over. Maybe I'll put a little heart for where the heart is supposed to be. Do something like that. And if we're feeling it, maybe we can make some pixelated 1930s eyes or something for him. Something like that. So the question is, does that look consistent with the style? I mean, it looks okay. It's maybe not perfect, but I'd say it's probably in the same vein. And again, remember, we're just kind of sketching this stuff out. Cool. So we'll go back into our shading. And again, I'm just going to grab the broader areas here. Go back into the tool presets. We'll grab Airbrush Soft. And we'll try and make this guy look a little bit more metallic. So we'll pull in our brush a little bit so it's a little bit more appropriate. So remember, metallics are going to have sharper contrast, right? So that's one thing that we want to see. Be a much darker bottom and a much lighter top. We might even go in, if we really size this brush down, we can maybe go in and sort of invert the colors on the eyes a little bit so that the irises look like they're part of a screen. Alright, and then just separately on this layer, I'm going to kind of just trace over what I have here before. Now, if you don't have a ton of control with your lasso tool, one thing that you could do is use your polygonal lasso tool. That might give you a little bit of a sharper edge. So for example, you could just go in, grab your polygonal lasso tool, and instead of having all the curves, you could just do something like this. Just faster, and again, I mean, we're just in sketch mode, so I mean, that might be just fine. Let's do that again with the polygonal lasso tool. That was nice and fast. And again, to use this, we're just clicking, just tapping. Now, as you're sketching, I mean, you don't have to get this detailed with your lighting if that's not what you're into. But I would recommend thinking about your lighting at this stage. Think about where your light is coming from. Think about what materials you have. You know, anytime you're doing a sketch, you're really just kind of making, taking some visual notes for how things are going to be, right? Yeah. So maybe something like that. Again, kind of quick. And then we've got our fish. So let's go back one pencil B. Right. Let's just start with a circle. Actually, I see these eyes over here. Let's do something like that. Do pill-shaped eyes. Looks like Studio kind of just puts them right next to one another. And then we'll do sort of the noodly mouth here. Make him a little angler fish. Here's his fins, and his tail. Right? Everything should be a shape. Absolutely everything should be a shape. Again, these are just sketches, so if things don't turn out quite the way that you want, you can always discard them. The more sketches you do, the more you'll be able to do this. Now, actually, I put this on the wrong layer, so I'm just going to select it. I'm going to do Edit, Cut, and then Paste. Then I'm just going to go back to my shading layer. And there we go. We've got this selected. Let's go back into our tool presets. Airbrush Soft. Again, let's start with a darker color. I always like to start with darker values and then put lighter values on top of them. Right? Or you can start with a darker value, figure out where your highlight is, or rather your highlights are, right? Because you're going to have every new surface. It's going to have highlights. And then I can just go in like that. Now this guy's an anglerfish, so let's give him glow-in-the-dark eyes here. When you've got the soft brush, that glow-in-the-dark is nice because it also sort of includes a little bit of fall off to it, which is kind of what you would see. Right. And then any other stuff that you'd like to do. Now, if it's of interest to you, you can start thinking about color. You can think, what would I do to change this guy? I want to go back and redo him. There's a lot of things that you can think about from here on out. But I mean, these are the sorts of things that you can do. So here we've got 3 different things. We've got a strawberry, we've got a robot, we've got a deep sea fish of some sort here. They generally look like they sort of belong in these worlds. They're using a lot of the shapes and shape language that we pulled from that. And generally we're sticking with the sorts of themes that we see. Again, you sort of have to be your own artist here and make some decisions. Some of your work is going to maybe look a little bit differently to your source, but that's kind of what you want to do. So I hope this helps helps you sort of figure out like how you want to organize your references and how you would like to start thinking about things like sketches and that sort of thing. Sometimes it's just a little difficult to know quite where to go when you're first starting out. But you can do some. But I think once you have a general idea of how everything is going to go together, you start to get maybe a little more excited about some of these ideas and how they might play out in your final project. So again, thanks for your attention. Hope this little demo helps you guys out. Thanks again. Good luck.